to your mother. It's time for another episode of Birds with Friends. Just some high-flying ran fast vertical stems of professors from Penn watching eagles eating prey like Pazookies on birthdays. It's Philadelphia. Marissa, Bo, and Zach kicking it. Cooler than 3 penguins till Zach runs off with his valet keys. He's a real nuanced goose. Pull up a branch, get loose. It's time for some juice on some
Birds with Friends.
The early bird gets the worm but prefers getting turned like a turn on some
Birds with Friends.
Marissa, Bo, and Zach are here to squawk. Don't miss the mistress talk on some.
I don't call it the off season. I call it the non-playing season.
Is that what you say when people, normies ask you about what you do in the off season? You say it's not the off season, it's the non-playing season.
I don't correct them, but I'll call it the non-playing season.
Okay.
I'll feel like there's the playing season.
The NPO.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Birds with Friends on a Wednesday morning, bright and early-ish. Maybe not to Zach, but 9:30, 9:33 here on the East Coast. We are 1 week away from the start of Eagles training camp. It is a time of rebirth. We got a new season upon us. Things begin anew. And with that, Zach, we send it to the Stone Cold Newsman for the latest on what's happening with the Birds and Birds with Friends.
Major news since we last spoke. The star of Birds with Friends, Marissa Dunn, welcomed her first child into the world. Madison was born, and a happy part of Birds with Friends. We are actually receiving messages from Marissa as we do this. So Marissa's and Madison, they're saying hello. Madison is wearing a new outfit to match mom on the day of Birds with Friends, and big changes going on in the Dunn household as I think Michael's heading the training camp, obviously. So Marissa will have time to listen to Birds with Friends while doing much more important things with Madison. But we're all thinking of Marissa, Madison, and Michael here at the Birds with Friends. Well, Bo and I are not together, but we are thinking of Marissa, and we miss her
Together.
And yes, we want her to take all the time she needs, but we can't wait to get her back. And we're thrilled to have Ken in the interim right here. Back to you in the studio, Bo.
You got it. Nice job. MD. We got MD, MD, and MD. Congratulations, of course, to all the Dunns. Marissa just sent us a picture. As you said, they're wearing their matching this is not a pyramid scheme, Birds with Friends shirts. So you know that they're big time sickos, as we would expect. Zach, how you doing? Haven't talked to you. I haven't seen you. What's going on? What have you been up to?
I'm doing well. Thrilled to see you. Missed seeing you in person, but also missed the pod. It's been a few weeks here. I've been busy with some non-Birds with Friends projects, but I listened to some
Cryptic.
Birds with Friends.
Okay, interesting.
I won't be cryptic. As I said, I was teaching a class, and I've been writing a book, and so there's been a lot going on here.
Whoa. Do we need another breaking news? You've been writing a book. Breaking news here on Birds with Friends as Zach Berman announces to the Birds with Friends universe that he has been spending his vacation writing a book. What's the book?
Well, that I might be a little cryptic about, because the publishers tend to like to announce that, but it is Eagles related, and it's been a fun, interesting, at times excruciating process during the summer.
Whoa!
But I'm enjoying it, and it'll come out in 2024, fall of 2024. But before then, there's a lot of Birds with Friends and Eagles and athletic content to consume and discuss.
I mean, we have not been talking about this on the podcast, so I feel like now that you've mentioned it, we have to get into it a little bit. Whether or not you want to talk about the specific project that you are working on, Vinny Curry shoes, I'd like to ask you just personally, how has this been? How has it been in the Berman household as Emily hopes to have her husband for a period of the off season, but instead you're bunkered in working on a book.
Yeah, that hasn't been ideal. And I've also been doing some athletic stuff during the PTO as well. There's a story that came out this week on Connor Barwin that I was eager to write and report. And I had a few other athletic things I was doing during PTO. And so I've had
Riding a
these
bike. No.
these very rigid, like planned daily schedules where I'm allotting this amount of time to X, this amount of time to Y, this amount of time to Z. And meanwhile, it's beautiful outside. It's like the only time of year when nothing's going on with the Eagles. So yeah, I mean, we don't need to delve too into the into the personal stuff, but that's been that's been interesting to navigate. Nonetheless, I'm thrilled for Birds with Friends, and I think our audience is eager to hear how you are and how your summer's been. I've tried not to bother you too much.
You feel less No. That was just me being cranky one day. Do you feel less like refreshed and ready for the season than you might otherwise because you've been working so hard in the summer interim?
Refreshed in the I feel less refreshed in the traditional sense. Like I wasn't just sitting, I didn't recharge, if you will, but I feel more excited for camp than in a long time because
it's an escape from the book.
Yeah, because like I enjoy being around people. I enjoy talking football. I enjoy seeing football. And there's a quote. I think it's been attributed to Mark Twain. I hope I'm not misquoting.
Probably isn't, but yeah.
But it's better to have written than it is to write. And that's very much like a book writing process. Like when you go to a bookstore or you see the physical copy, that's an awesome feeling. But the actual process is you can rip your hair out sometimes, right? So but
you don't usually feel like that. That's always how I feel. You don't usually feel like that, right?
Not typically, but in any sense, I'm excited for camp in part for that reason. Like I enjoy the routine of camp. I enjoy the unknown that comes from each day of camp, and just the season has a certain energy. The city has a certain energy during the season. And so I'm not recharged in the sense that I didn't get away. I haven't been like sitting on the beach really, but I've been I'm excited for camp otherwise.
Now, is there, obviously Birds with Friends sickos are going to want to run out and get this book and they won't be welcome to listen unless they do. But is there a place they can go to like pre-order this bad boy, or is it not even at that stage yet?
Yeah, and that's why I've been reluctant to get into it. Because it's not even at that stage. It hasn't been submitted, hasn't been edited. There's a process there that still takes place. But Emily actually kept saying, like, why are you so cryptic whenever Bo makes these allusions to how ridiculous you're being during your PTO or during the summer? And so I said, you know what, I won't be cryptic about it, but that's kind of why, because there's a whole process that takes place once you finish, submit, it's edited, and then everything goes thereafter.
I mean, we were talking about you riding Overdogs in January. You came through.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting book. But
are you going to dedicate it to Madison Dunn?
I don't believe I will dedicate it to Madison Dunn. I will give Madison Dunn a copy, right. But no, I will not allocate the dedication to Madison Dunn. How are you? How was your?
Congratulations, Zach. That's very exciting.
Thank you. Appreciate that. How was your summer?
It's been okay.
How'd you shoot?
I mean, I've been playing a little bit. Okay, nothing crazy. It's not like I'm out on the golf course every day.
How are the kids?
Maybe once a week or once every other week. Kids are good. No, we haven't really done too much like traveling or anything. We did a couple days in Maine in June, but we've mostly been enjoying the city as it empties as everybody leaves to go to the shore.
So I haven't asked you this, but I imagine you're a big immaculate grid guy.
I
Is
am a
that
big
fair to
immaculate
say?
grid guy.
Okay,
Yeah,
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 you strike me as
absolutely.
someone
One of
who
the
would
first things I do
be
when I wake up in the morning.
very competitive about the rarity score.
It's not that I'm competitive about it, but I am trying to. I am trying to
Okay.
keep it down. Yeah,
What's your best rarity score so
where I
far?
can. I don't know. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yesterday, I got I got all 9, but there were a couple big ones. Let me see. I can pull it up because I do send the screenshots to my brother. We go back and forth.
Okay.
Let's see. Yesterday was this is 179. Just okay.
And then
Had a few over 50 percenters.
who's your who's been your most I would say esoteric or
Impossible to
obscure
say. I
player that
mean,
you've used? Okay.
impossible to say. There's anytime you get under a 0.5%, you're feeling
Yeah.
good about yourself.
Do you
Like a
usually go 9
Mariana
for 9?
Duncan or
Yeah.
I don't always go 9 for 9. I would say
Okay.
like every third day I'm going 9 for 9.
Okay.
Something like that.
How would you do in a football one? What would be your best one?
There is a
Basketball?
football one, and I meant
Okay.
to send this the other day because they had
Okay.
and it's not as good. Like the functionality is not as
Okay.
good. It's less reliable. But they had an Eagles Commanders one, and you know what I did?
Mm. Ah, two hill.
I had Two Hill, and it was like point zero. It was like I was the only one who had done Casey Two Hill,
Yes.
and that
All
made me
right.
very
There you
happy.
go.
Yeah.
Good. Good.
How about you? Are you into the grid? I mean, you must be. You're speaking the language of it.
Yes, I am. I am into the grid, and I don't get obscure enough. Sometimes I probably lean more toward modern players,
Mm,
right? I see Tyler Kepner does each. He posts his, and I'm amazed when Tyler has players from like the 20s, 30s. I would expect that from Tyler,
mm.
but
That's
but
what it
yeah,
is for me. It's either like current players from this year, players from the 90s,
mhm.
or like really old players. I'm happy to throw in a Cap Anson if I can.
What messes me up sometimes, like I'm into baseball prospects. I've said we
Mm,
discussed that on the
mm.
show,
So if they haven't played
and
a game,
if they haven't played a
yeah,
game, exactly. So you remember a trade, right? This player was traded from this organization to this organization, but they didn't play a game at the big league level, and so they're not included there.
that's what messed me up on the football one.
Okay.
Because they had I don't know if it should necessarily have to be they've played a game in the NFL because there are fewer games. So like, I get dinged that Andrew Adams doesn't count for Eagles Bucks. Come on, what are we doing here?
He shouldn't though. He didn't play for the
I know,
Eagles,
but he should.
right?
If you're on
Yeah.
a training camp roster, I feel like that should count. It's a little bit different than baseball.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Who would you do for Eagles Bucks?
Who would I do for Eagles? Bo Allen would be the
Yeah,
first one
that
that
was
would
what
come
I
to my
landed
mind.
on. After
Okay.
Reggie Brown also didn't work. The Bucks traded for Reggie Brown and then he never played a game for him. That should count. They
Mm.
traded for him.
Good point.
All right, Zach. We do have training camp to look forward to. This Eagles team coming off a Super Bowl appearance. What comes next? What do they do next? So much change. So we're gonna do a little exercise. We're gonna do a draft, a non-competitive draft. We don't need to get back to me wiping the floor with you as I did in the Flit Squad draft.
That was the last pod
Flip
we
squad.
did, and there was a lot of reaction. I will say this: I am not too proud to say that I always read the comment section, right? Like some
There
people
were
say,
some
don't
people
read
who
the
are getting
comment.
very, very nasty to me.
Man, I gotta say, and to me, and
But like
first
they
off,
were
Bo and
saying,
I
like,
get
"Oh,
along quite well.
I'm so cocky that I said I won the game." You said I won. You admitted that I won.
Yes. Yeah, Bo and I get along quite well, by the way. Some of it uh is for show on the
Yeah,
pod.
of
Some of
course.
it is just when you're doing a pod for X amount of time. And then the other thing is you want the pod to be natural. So we don't plan things out as much as some other pods do. Like this isn't scripted. So my reactions sometimes are as they would be in the heat of the moment, as opposed to if I was actually planning something out per se. But anyways, I appreciate the feedback for that one, and Bo did win. But the one piece of feedback that I would agree on from that is I think the deck was stacked against me when I did not have the first pick in free agency. I should have had
100%. Yeah, it was not a fair exercise.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I think
yeah,
that's
so
absolutely right.
I did not mean to interject. That
Maybe
was the
next year
last time we owned the
I
pod.
think we said maybe next year we make it an auction. Make it a little bit more.
Yeah. Make it 18 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that in mind, Zach, we want to draft the things that we are most looking forward to about watching training camp. I figure we could go maybe 10, 5 each. And I'll let you go first. What are you most excited about? The smell of pads crunching again, the sound of pads crunching against each other, the smell of sweat and Ritas. What's going to what's moving your needle?
I'm going to preface this real quick by saying I'm not doing like just the big picture storylines that have to do with the season. It's things that I'm actually watching in training camp, right? Like I think a big storyline going into this year and something we'll discuss is how they rebound from that Super Bowl loss, because that can go in a lot of different directions. But you're not watching in training camp to see how are they rebounding from the Super Bowl loss, right? Per se. So the first thing I'll say is they're replacing coordinators on both sides of the ball. Is that too broad? Should I go to one side?
No. I think the new coordinators is a good place to start.
Okay, yeah. So the new coordinator. So you want to see schematically now. Nick Sirianni's very careful about not showing much. He does believe in this competitive advantage idea quite a bit, maybe more than he has to, but certainly whatever Nick's done so far works. So I don't think we'll see the full package, just as we didn't see the full Hassan Reddick experience last year until the game started. But we will see some of the specifics of the size scheme. We'll have a better sense of that. And then Brian Johnson as a play caller, you won't see play calling really until they get into the game. But you can see how the offense is functioning with Johnson, if there's any changes, if there's any differences. And there's little subtle things I'm really interested in seeing how they're – well, I'll get to that in a bit. But I think as a place to start, the new coordinators on both sides of the ball.
And I think to add to that, beyond, I mean, even whatever they're going to show us of scheme is nice, but I'm excited to just see their personalities, right? I want to see what the size like on the field. Coaching these guys, how is it different than Jonathan Gannon? What's Brian Johnson like? Our view of Brian Johnson so far has been that he's sort of a little bit more reserved on the sidelines, kind of a cool customer. But how does that? Are there things that are going to get him worked up on the field as the coordinator? It's just going to be fun to see this all play out. Get to know some new personalities, some new supporting characters in the everybody's favorite television show, the Eagles.
And a quick aside here, there has been and there will be really good Sean Desai content in the next few weeks and months and whatnot. But I do want to give a shout out to Fran Duffy, friend of the pod, who worked with Sean Desai at Temple. You'll hear about that. He had a good interview with Desai that I thought really got into Desai's early years well. So shout out to Fran.
The best way to get to know Sean Desai at this point is to listen to that podcast with Fran. All right, Zach, I'll go. I'm going to be honest here. I'm going to tell you what I am looking forward to the most. And that is finding out the identity of this year's Bo Wolf training camp crush. I mean, that's what it's all about to me. And Zach, I want to run you through the history, the recent history of the Bo Wolf camp crush.
Oh, okay.
Because when you consider how these players came in and what they went on to achieve, it's really impressive. 2018. As camp begins, the Eagles sign a camp body wide receiver on July 27th. The guy who's bounced around, been on the scrap heap, young man, diminutive, by the name of DeAndre Carter. Very early on, catches Bo Wolf's eye. The initial Bo Wolf training camp crush has been in the league ever since. Not necessarily with the Eagles. He's been a productive player. Over 1,000 receiving yards, carved out quite a career for himself. What an eye. Following year, 2019. Eagles bring in an impressive class of undrafted offensive linemen. The big bonuses go to Nate Herbig and Ryan Bates. But another guy from Weber State is the one whose power, the strength of his hands catches my eye. Sua Opeta. Been in the league ever since. Worthwhile starter in a pinch. Following year, 2020, Eagles sign an undrafted safety out of Army. Give him peanuts. No guaranteed money, basically, compared to the rest of the class. And yet the way he moves, the way he reacts to the ball. Elijah Riley. Still in the league. Been in the league ever since. Following year, 2021, another offensive lineman out of Buffalo. Coyote Awashika. Still in the league. I mean, it's only been 2 years, but maybe the relative to how he came in, what he turned out to be, still good. I mean, a good eye. Not quite the overachievement that some of these other guys have been. And then last year, I mean, the guy who got the least guaranteed money of any of the Eagles' undrafted free agents turned out to be not just a 53-man roster player. Goes into his first action in the NFL on defense, intercepts Aaron Rodgers, earns a starting job, penciled in as a potential starter now. Reed Blankenship, what a call! Who will it be this year, Zach? Who's it going to be?
Who are your candidates?
I don't want to prejudge. I got to let I see.
Okay.
So I can't wait.
And now,
find out who it's going to be?
So what's the process for? Are you
the heart? The heart wants what the heart wants.
Okay. Are there characteristics that appeal to you more than others?
Sex appeal? No, just you just watch. You see who stands out, who pops. That's to me, and this is the whole thing. This is the most football that we get to watch all year long. It's the only time we get to watch all of practice and make our own opinions on these guys and watch them move, watch them play. It's tough because it's the beginning of the long marathon of the season, but it's the best part of the year as far as I'm concerned.
And what's the threshold for a player is too entrenched or too popular to be the camp crush?
It's a good question. I would say it's got to be someone who doesn't have an established NFL career and probably hasn't been picked in the first 5 rounds. I think maybe 6th or 7th round could count, but we'll see.
And is it allowed to be a draft pick?
Oh, I just said I don't think it could be maybe 6th or 7th round, maybe.
Yeah. But so it could be like Ojomo.
It could be if it seems to me like he's outperforming what your expectations would have been for him. Yeah.
Okay. And is it allowed to be someone who's been here before and just shows improvement, or does it have to be a new face?
No, it could be somebody who's been here before and shown improvement. It hasn't been yet, but it could be. Yeah.
Okay.
It could be like a Janarius Robinson, for instance.
Yeah.
He could qualify.
But he doesn't fit the draft pick qualification for you. But
he's been kicked around the league.
Yeah. Okay.
He does not. He's never played a regular season game before.
Yeah. And Christian Ellis has played too many snaps in order to be.
I don't think Christian Ellis could count. Yeah.
Okay.
He's too much in the Eagles zeitgeist at this point already.
Gotcha. Okay. So he has to be a little more obscure. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And
he has to be someone who I can own, who I can go out on a limb and stay claim as he's my guy.
Okay. All right. This is
now I was high on Christian Ellis in the past, but he wasn't. He didn't get the official BWCC.
But like, say in theory, Devin Allen looks much better. Okay, too much in the zeitgeist. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the Bo Camp Crush is your top pick.
That's what I'm excited for. I mean, if I'm being honest,
I know this isn't a competitive draft, but I was not going to pick that. So
I know that's why
you could have waited.
If we were being competitive, I would have waited. Yes. But I wanted to be honest and stay true to my board.
Okay.
All right. Over to you.
So I suppose I'm too mainstream here, right? But I want to see.
I know what you're going to pick. I think it's the right pick.
Yeah, I want to see the right guard competition here.
Okay.
Is that what you're going to say?
No, that's not what I thought you were going to say, but that's a good pick.
Okay, yeah. I am with Bo in that I think it's Cam Jurgens' spot to lose. but I'm not utterly convinced that Cam Jurgens has that spot entrenched. I think Tyler Steen can push there. And there are going to be days when Cam Jurgens is playing center at practice. Right? Jason Kelsey is going to have some days off. We've seen that in the past. That will continue to be the case. And we saw on the last day of training camp this year, or I'm sorry, the last day of mini camp. It wasn't even mini camp. Last day of the all-season program. When Kelsey wasn't there, they had Jurgens at center. And on those veteran days off, Jurgens is going to play center because if something were to happen to Kelsey this year, Jurgens is the center. And I do think Steen's going to get time with the first team. And they're different players. And I understand Steen's not an established guard either, right? He's making the transition from tackle to guard, but he comes with more size. And I think that transition from tackle to guard might be, I don't want to say easier to make, but it could be easier for Steen to go from tackle to guard than Jurgens to go from center to guard. So I'm curious to watch that.
Yeah, I mean, and Steen doesn't have to change his body, right? Whereas Jurgens has been working on adding all this muscle, and I think Jason Kelsey talked about that on his podcast. So all this beef, rather.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the main event of competition this summer. I agree. So I think that's a good pick, no doubt about it. I'll take the one I thought you were going to take, and that is just let's get some eyes on Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. These are incredibly important players for the Eagles if they're going to maintain what they want to do on defense. Jalen Carter, we know the story. He's a top 3 talent in the draft. He fell for all the reasons we know. Does he look like that? The concerns about conditioning and work ethic, things like that, do they play out in any way? Does he immediately look like one of the best players on the field? And as for Jordan Davis, the Eagles are relying on him a lot, and it's a bit of a leap of faith based on what he did last season. Do we see a jump from him? Do we see any of the same conditioning issues with him? The Eagles are very much counting on those two guys to be really good. Do they look it right away?
I will be watching that. And as a follow-up to that, we've been having, in athletic terms, what we call all 32s, which is every beat writer or every team's represented in these joint articles. And they've been coming out once a week. And one of them was breakout players. And you put Milton Williams in there. And I thought that was interesting because typically I do think he would fit that profile. 3rd year, ascending player, improved from year 1 to year 2. Teams high on him. But how do you think that ascension comes when there's already Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Fletcher Cox? Like, is he going to get more time at D end? Is he just going to be the 4th D tackle? Is he going to play more than one of those guys I mentioned? How do you see that happening?
Yeah, I think there's all these snaps that Javon Hargrave left. I think Milton Williams takes some of those. I think he takes some of the snaps off of, Dominican Sue and Linval Joseph, who left. I think Fletcher Cox maybe takes a few fewer snaps. And I just think that, like, arc of his career-wise, I think he's the player who they can rely on that is going to actually take this jump. I think he's been very good when healthy. And I think he offers certainly more pass rush upside than Jordan Davis does at this point. And so I think he's going to be on the field plenty. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we take a little break, Zach? We got one ad, and we'll come back with the last 3 rounds of this training camp preview draft.
We all have busy lives these days and can't afford to waste the day stuck on the couch because of a few drinks the night before. ZBiotics is the answer we've all been waiting for. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it most. Just remember to drink ZBiotics before drinking alcohol, drink responsibly, and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. Give ZBiotics a try for yourself. Go to zbiotics.com/birds to get 15% off your first order when you use BIRDS at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're not satisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/bird and use the code BIRDS at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode.
All right, back on Birds with Friends. Now, Zach, as you mentioned, we've got our dear old friend, Kent, on the ones and twos producing this podcast today. For those of you who have not checked it out, Kent, very integral in putting together the latest story podcast that we have on The Athletic, the Play
Narrative
Callers.
pod, yeah.
Narrative pod, headlined by Jordan Rodriguez. And she had talked to all of these people in the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. You got Sean McVay, you got Mike McDaniel, you got Robert Saleh, you got Matt LaFleur, all these guys. Highly recommended to all of our listeners. And make sure you're paying attention to the great musical cues and all the great producing that Kent has put together.
Well said. Great job all around, Jordan and Kent and everyone involved in there. And I thought that from a football perspective, you can learn a lot there. And then also from a human perspective. And I thought the coach that came off the best to me was Mike McDaniel. He speaks speaks to my heart when he speaks that. When he was, I think it was the first episode or the second episode where he was talking about just trying to figure out how he can add value, like where he can be different, and that the passing guys, there was no way to have a word in with the passing guys. So he basically had to learn the run game just so they can say one thing to get ownership of. I thought that was interesting. So yeah, so I liked the whole thing, but Mike McDaniel jumped out to me.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Zach, you are up now. What are you looking for?
So I'm going to be watching these linebackers closely. And the reason I'm watching these linebackers closely, well, it's a position where they're not particularly strong, but all of us last year watching could tell safety was a problem. And you would ask the Eagles about safety and they would say all the right things. But then all of a sudden, Anthony Harris wasn't taking the snaps that maybe you thought he was going into camp.
And Jonathan was not even mentioning his name that one time. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I think that was in Cleveland, actually.
Yeah. It was in Cleveland.
And so
what's going on?
Yeah. And so when Bo says this is the chance we get to watch and make judgments with our own eyes, if those are all closed, right, and we're just asking these questions and there's no concern at safety, yada yada yada. It was very clear there was a concern at safety, and they went out and they made a move to their credit, and they get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and safety was a good position for them last season with Gardner-Johnson and Epps. I don't want to say that Nicholas Mora won't be a starting caliber linebacker for them. He's been fine in the past. He's started in Chicago, started in Vegas/Oakland. But if that is an issue, that's a position that they could seek to upgrade in mid to late August, right? I think that Kobe Deans can get every chance to be on the field all the time. They have a lot invested in Dean, and that is a position, linebacker, historically, where they haven't cared so much about investing resources. But if it's a weak spot in this defense, it's a position they can go out and add. So I want to see if they have two starting linebackers going into camp or going into the season.
So I don't have it quite as high, only because I find personally linebacker the most difficult position to evaluate in training camp because they're not hitting. It's a little bit difficult. However, it's you're absolutely right in terms of the roster construction and the roster picture. I would be shocked if this is the linebacking group that they enter week
Mm.
1 with. I would be, if we're doing turkeys, I would put like 85 turkeys on they're making some kind of move at linebacker before week 1, whether it's a trade or even, signing one of these guys who are on the street. There are some linebackers who are like playable still on the street. But I mean, right now, it's Nakobe Dean, who has played like 20 snaps in the NFL. Nicholas Morrow, who was, is like a replacement level starter. There's a reason that the Bears went and paid $30 million to replace him with TJ Edwards and Edmonds. And Christian Ellis is the top backup, and I like Christian Ellis. If you're asking me right now, like who's going to play more snaps on defense this year, Christian Ellis or Nicholas Morrow, I would say Christian Ellis. But I think they're going to make some kind of move. Don't you?
Well, I think they're going to wait and see, but
yeah.
So if you had to split it up between a Morrow, a backup, and a player who's not here as the second starter week 1, how would you split that up?
I mean, I guess if I was betting on it, I probably would have to say Morrow week 1. But I think you're looking at like
spreading your turkeys,
like the Zach Brown scenario, where it's like he's here to start the first month of the season until they can find a better solution.
And then Kirk Cousins, they play Kirk Cousins in week 2, and that linebacker's ripping on Kirk Cousins.
That's good. Good callback. Yeah, I mean it is like glaringly, obviously the weak spot on the roster at the moment, and part of that is by design. If you have to go weak somewhere, that's the place to go weak. But they have enough flexibility, cap room wise, to be able to make a move here when they can.
And I don't want to pat ourselves on the back, but when you're watching practice for 3 weeks, these things become obvious. It's been that way in the past at some other positions where you said this is going to be a concern. They don't have the starter and they don't have the depth, and so I'm curious to see how that materializes.
Yeah, good one. I'll take the other obvious competition, and that is safety, where I think we've got 3 guys competing for 2 spots. That being Terrell Edmonds, Reed Blankenship, and Sidney Brown. I think the likelihood is probably that it's Edmonds and Blankenship at the start of the season, and we'll see if Brown can make a move as the season goes on. But everything I hear is that the team is like already very high on Sidney Brown. They were very impressed with what he did in the spring. I don't think it would be a major surprise at all if he is starting week 1. And so watching those 3 jockey for position, I think is going to be fun.
So my next one here, and this has to do with Brian Johnson and the offense, has to do with some of the offseason pickups. But I vividly remember being at training camp 2 years ago when Nick Sirianni he's trying to be cryptic about what their entire offense is going to be. But one thing he says is, I will tell you this right now, the running backs are going to be part of the passing game in this offense. Okay. He was very outspoken about it. And then you saw the way last year went. The Eagles had 61 targets to running backs, the fewest in the NFL, 12.1% of their pass attempts. Now, that's obviously because A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert monopolized the passing game. That was not the case 2 years ago. So that's what changed. And that's still going to be the case, that those top 3 monopolize the passing game. But I do think the Eagles are going to get the ball into DeAndre Swift's hands in the passing game. I think he's going to be more of a factor there. And so this is a roundabout way of saying I want to see this new look backfield, the Swift-Penny combination, how Gainwell improves. But in particular, I think you're going to see the passing game, the running back passing game, be an extension of the running game this year a little bit more. And I think they're going to do more to get Swift into space. And so I will be paying attention to that quite a bit.
How do you see, if you had to guess right now, Zach, how do you see like those touches breaking out over the course of the season?
Yes. So this answer won't surprise you. I think Swift's going to have a big year. I would buy Swift stock right now. I know running backs are in the news right now. And I think the Eagles are going to do everything to get DeAndre Swift paid somewhere, right? He's in the last year of his deal. You correctly pointed it out last year about Miles Sanders. They are going to run Miles Sanders. They're going to use him. They're not going to re-sign him, right? And that's what happened. He got a lot of carries. He had a productive year, and he did well on the open market, relatively speaking.
So he got the most money of any running back this offseason. Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that like Swift is one and done here, but I think, they get a guy who's in the last year of his deal, and Swift can do a lot. I think he's an explosive player. I think Swift's going to have his most productive season as an NFL running back to date, and I think he's going to be the top guy. Now, I think Penny's going to have a role when he's healthy. History suggests you can't count on Penny being healthy throughout the whole season, and they do like Gainwell, but so I think Gainwell will mix in, but I very much believe Swift is going to be the top guy.
I'm a little bit of a Swift skeptic at this point. This is not about the deal that they made. That like all of that was good value, and he's got this upside. He's got these explosive tendencies. There's a reason that Detroit was willing to let him go for nothing. There's a reason he lost his job. Each of the past 2 seasons, his numbers are like on a per carry basis as a running back are not very good. He takes a lot of negative plays. He was and this is not necessarily the situation where you can just bank on he's going to be in a much more running back friendly offense. That was as good of an offensive line as there was in the league last year, aside from the Eagles in Detroit. I am not, and he has also like not to the Rashad Penny level, but he has had injuries throughout his career. He's missed at least 3 games in each of his first 3 seasons. So I am like a little bit. I'm not so sure we're going to see what everyone thinks we're going to see from DeAndre Swift. I think he's got he's got serious game breaking potential. He's got that speed. I think you're probably right that his biggest impact is going to come as a receiver, but as I wrote last week, I'm not so sure that Kenny Gainwell doesn't just end up leading the team in rushes.
I saw you wrote that, and I would make a bet that's not going to happen. But
yeah, I mean, I'm going out on a limb.
Yeah, that was a good piece too. You can check that out. Bo had a piece on under the radar players are going to take on bigger roles this year.
Well, I mean, spend your time reading Zach's piece on Connor Barwin instead.
It's not mutually exclusive.
I mean, it might be how much time these people have.
I know you'll say it's because of the Philly connection, and I do admit I have a soft spot for Philly-born or players from the Philly area. This is purely from a football perspective. Swift is the type of running back that I've always liked. I think that he has dynamic ability, just needs to do it on a consistent basis. We were there in Detroit last year in week 1 when he had that huge run on the opening drive, had the best game of his career, basically. So I think that, and he's in a contract year. I know what you say about a running back friendly offense, but he was productive in the bet. They just took him off the field in goal line situations, right? I mean, frankly,
he was not that productive.
The Lions didn't keep Jamal Williams either. And they really liked Gibbs. I think Gibbs is a really good player too. So they went in that direction. But I know your response to this is going to be Robert Quinn and Jannard Avery. I get it. But Howie Roseman is not just giving away 4th round picks for.
It's like a 2 years away 4th round pick.
I think
he is sort of giving those away.
I think it's next year.
I thought it was
2024.
Was it 2024? I thought it was 25 for some reason.
Is it 25? I would have to look that up. But I think that I think Swift's gonna be good for the Eagles, and I think you'll see in camp the way they get the ball to him in the passing game. And I'm also not one of these people who says that
2025 4th round pick.
2025. Okay, you're right.
And
I'm not. They swapped 7s.
Oh, they swapped 7s. Yeah, that's right.
I'm not one of these guys who believes that Jalen Hurts is going to run the ball less this season, or a lot less. I still think they're going to lean in. I still think they're going to lean into Jalen running the ball.
He needs to.
Yeah, but one thing they can do is like quick passes to the backs as something different in the offense, and I'm curious to see that.
Okay. I will take a very down the middle, obvious one here. I just want to see Jalen Hurts. Um, he's the big man on campus now. He's got his big contract. He has taken a significant leap each of the first 3 seasons of his career. What is left for him to do? I think we have seen like the evidence of those leaps in training camp each of the past couple summers. There's no shiny new AJ Brown this year. It's a little bit more on his shoulders to improve. I think we agree that just having watched Jalen Hurts up close and from a distance over the past 3 years, there's no reason to doubt that he's been in the lab, so to speak. So I'm just curious to see how he looks, what the vibe is like with him. And he's the most important player on the team. Let's see how it goes.
Well said. I wish I had more to add there, but
Yeah, I mean,
you're absolutely right. I mean,
it's not a particularly insightful thing to say, but I'm excited to watch him.
no, it's true. And camp has been where we've seen these past 2 years. Like, he was inconsistent in camp 2 years ago, and he was inconsistent during the season. He was really good in camp last year, and I thought he was obviously really good during the season. And there's not much changing. I mean, he's very much there's very little for him to prove. Now, I've said this whenever I've asked. What I want to see is the baseline from him so good that there aren't those bad days in there. That he is just day in, day out. He's one of the best players in the league. So fascinated to see that. I will go here with skill position depth. And when I say skill position, specifically wide receiver and tight end, they were fortunate to get good health last year from AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. They lost Dallas Goedert, and even though they won games during that period, I think that did have an effect on their offense for some time. The Eagles did not make many moves there. They added Zacchaeus at wide receiver. Am I pronouncing it correctly? I
think so. Yeah.
Okay, good. And then they added Dan Arnold at tight end. Those are 2 players who've been in the league, have had some production.
Did you know that Dan Arnold is the only player on the roster whose first initial and last name is also the last name of an NFL player?
I did not know. No. I imagine I'll be reading that on The Athletic sometime soon.
Maybe. We'll see if it makes the
cut. So wide receiver in particular, I remember having a conversation, or not conversation, an interview with Howie one time, but when we were really getting into, do you have depth here? Do you have depth there? And the point was if your biggest concern is your backup such and such, that's a sign you have a good roster. And
national media people aren't worried about how who our fourth defensive end is.
Yeah. And look, now they have other spots that are up for grabs, like we say. If your biggest, if you lose an AJ Brown or Devontae Smith, any team in the league, if they lose that guy, they don't have a Pro Bowler waiting in the wings. But the Eagles didn't draft someone there. They don't have that clear outside guy. I think Quez Watkins will probably spend more time on the outside this year. You heard Sirianni talking up Quez Watkins during camp. But I am interested to watch. And the exercise that we did in our last pod where we drafted the teams and I got brutalized was part of the lesson there is they don't have that depth at wide receiver, and that AJ Brown or Devontae Smith, if they go down, that affects the offense. And I've been asked, what would make Jalen Hurts have a down year this year or not as good a year as last year? I don't think there's anything I don't think Jalen's all of a sudden going to regress as a quarterback. But if
there's some minor turnover reversion type things, but yeah.
But if he doesn't have AJ or Devontae on the field, or if there's injuries on the offensive line, I think that would affect Jalen. It would affect any quarterback. So I want to see do one of these undrafted guys become the camp crush for you, like Joseph Nada, let's say, right? And I apologize, Ngata. It's spelled the same as Haloti Nada.
Right, exactly. This is an important distinction. It's spelled the same, but it's pronounced differently.
Yes. I apologize for that. Ngata, Joseph Ngata. If he steps up, if if Zacchaeus is real good in the slot, that they start viewing Quez as like the outside, as the backup on the outside. Or if Covey takes a jump in the slot, right? There's different variables there. And then a player you mentioned in your piece last week, Grant Calcaterra. Can he be that number 2 pass catching tight end and have a role? He was coming, he was banged up during camp last year, but early in camp, he came on, looked good.
Yeah, I think if you were like, you did the piece today on revisiting the offseason plan. Like, I think if you had showed me what the roster was going to look like in training camp back in March, I think one of the biggest surprises to me would have been that they didn't do more at wide receiver. Zacchaeus is a perfectly reasonable, good addition. And as you just said, like, we're talking about who's the 4th or 5th receiver. Maybe that's a little bit too nitpicky, but I am surprised that they didn't at some point, draft a receiver in the 6th or 7th round, or even the guys who they signed, Ngata and Jaden Hazelwood, were not necessarily like you're thinking this guy could definitely contribute. So I'm a little bit surprised, and this is unlike linebacker, where like there's always going to be somebody who you could sign. Wide receiver is not like that, unless you're signing Jarvis Landry at this point. It's a pretty weak market. I wouldn't be surprised. I've talked about it before. If they send like a 7th round pick or something for somebody like KJ Hamler or D Eskridge, something like that, just to add some speed. I think they could use that. But I do think that who's gonna pop at those skill positions is an interesting one.
Yeah, and as a follow up to that, because you mentioned the draft, and it's clear they loved Sidney Brown, right? And Steen is someone who fits an organizational priority, and they really liked him as well. But because it's the same division, if Jalen Hyatt becomes like a game-breaking player for the Giants, or that type of dynamic receiver for the Giants, the Eagles had 2 third-round picks, and they obviously value wide receiver more.
That was my shadow draft pick, right?
I believe so,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. So Jalen Hyatt's someone who, they're going to see twice a year for the next few years. I'm curious to see how those careers look, because the Eagles have always felt you can find safeties later on in the draft, whereas wide receivers, they got Quez Watkins in the 6th round, but they haven't typically felt that way. So that'll be I'm curious to watch that.
I will go here to what I think is the deepest position on the team, and a position where you can, I think, really judge and get good eyes in training camp, and that is cornerback. And the race for roster spots here, I think, is as tightly contested as it is anywhere else. It's hard to believe you're going to keep more than 6 corners, and usually it's 5. And you've got Darius Slay and James Bradbury and Avonte Maddox, who are locks, right? Keely Ringo is going to be on the team. That's 4. So now you're talking about 1 or 2 spots for Zach McPherson, who is an interesting player to follow, because as we talked about in the spring, they were giving him some reps inside. It'll be interesting to see if they can trust him as the backup slot. You've got Josh Jobe, who made the team last year and they carried and they like. You've got a couple interesting undrafted rookies in Eli Ricks and Mekhi Garner. You've got Greedy Williams, obviously, who they signed from Cleveland and is still young and has starting experience. Even like Mario Goodrich, who was around last year, and Tristan McCollum, who I think may be more of a safety for them at this point. I think that's the best down roster competition, and like in comparison to wide receiver, where you're sort of looking for who could be a 5th guy, it's like, oh man, how do we figure out who not to keep here at this position? So I think that's going to be a fun one.
Well said. And that's also too where, as I was spending time thinking about the roster this summer, is if you get Avonte Maddox some insurance work at safety, right? They're deeper at corner than they are at safety. You would rather you'd rather go deeper at corner when you set your 53, lighter.
I didn't even mention Josiah Scott, by the way.
Yeah, and lighter at safety. And then if something were to happen to whoever your starters are, you can bounce Avante over in a pinch, and then you feel more comfortable with a McPherson in the slot than say like Kayvon Wallace as your backup safety.
Mhm.
That's something to watch.
Yeah. Well, that was 10, Zach. Do you have one more you want to do just for good measure?
I mean, I can go on for hours, but we'll be talking about it quite a bit
We'll
during
do one
camp.
more each.
Yeah, so I know this is an odd thing to say, but injuries, because you're never watching practice to see like injuries, and you never want to see someone get hurt. The Eagles were really healthy last year. They had 22 of 22 starters healthy for the Super Bowl. And when we've talked about things that might be different this year compared to last year, the schedule's one thing. There are statistical regressions to the mean that could occur, but injury luck is something else. And there are notable players that have these non-contact injuries during camp sometimes, and I happened in Philly with Jeremy Maclin, happened a few years ago with the Jets with Carl Lawson. You never know what could happen in that regard. So you want to see them get healthy. Nick Sirianni does everything he can in terms of the scheduling of camp, and a big deal was made last year about, when I say a big deal was made, I don't want to inflate the importance of talk radio, right? But how short the practices were and the amount of days off they had for walkthroughs. That was done deliberately to get them healthy for the season, and they had a healthy season. But as Jason Kelsey's pointed out, and as we've pointed out on this pod, there's a difference between avoiding a soft tissue injury and just having that major, you tear your knee or you break a bone, something like that. And you want to make sure that the Eagles can get through the month of August healthy and get to the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like a both things can be true, where it seems like you can trust that the Eagles are at this point doing as good of a job as they can to try to limit injuries as much as is possible for them to do. And also, like, it seems like they are definitely due for some regression here, because not just how healthy they were last year, but like individual players who have been unhealthy were more healthy than usual. Even AJ Brown, there is I think internally probably an expectation, and it's not a fun thing to say, but it's like, all right, where are these injuries going to come from? And you just sort of cross your fingers and hope it's not one of the 6 most important players.
Sure.
Yeah. My last one, I got 2 here. I'll go. The one position where I also one other position where I think they may be looking to make some kind of addition is backup left tackle. Right now it's
as our game showed. Yes.
Right. It's Roderick Johnson based on the spring. Maybe Jack Driscoll can flip over there. But that is not a position where the Eagles are traditionally willing to leave that up to chance. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's an area where we see a signing from somebody off the street, or even a potential trade at some point. So following that. And then the last thing is in terms of roster spot competition, the number 3 quarterback job. Let's see what Tanner McKee and Ian Book have as they try to win that job. I would guess if I was putting turkeys, I'd put it at like 65% for Tanner McKee, because they used a draft pick on him, but they liked Ian Book enough to keep him around, and he would have theoretically the incumbent advantage. So we'll see how that goes.
Agree there. And while we're talking about actual roster competitions, if Jimmy Kemsky is listening at this point in the draft or this point in the pod, the punter situation.
I forgot about punter.
Yeah, because Howie Roseman Roseman's very precious about his 90-man roster spots, and he very seldom uses a second spot on a specialist. And the fact that they have another punter in camp, Ty Zentner, goes to show you that they want to have an in earnest competition here between Sipas and Zentner. So I don't know how much we can ascertain from those training camp practices. That probably comes down more to preseason games, unless the punter is so egregious one way or the other in camp. But yeah, I'll be curious to watch that.
How are you splitting your turkeys on that competition heading into camp?
55 for Sipas, 45 for Zetner.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah. I have a very minor but serious beef with Jimmy right now. He put out his well-researched ranking of Howie Roseman's training camp trades the other day. He gave a draw to his best trade.
Which trade was that?
One of the best trades in NFL history. He sent Bruce Hector to the Cardinals for Rudy Ford. Rudy
Yes.
Ford made the team, and then they got Bruce Hector back a
They're
week
back.
later.
Yes,
It was a
true.
free roll.
Okay. I remember that was the
He played him.
That was the 2019 season.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah.
That was like a magic trick.
That's a good one. Have you had the chance to watch quarterback?
I have not.
That hasn't
Should
made
I?
your absolutely. First off,
How much did you learn about Marcus Mariota?
I was going to ask you how you felt about Mariota. I liked Mariota in it. I thought he came off like the most normal of all of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, that would have been my guess. I mean, you got one who's like very much not normal, then you got a guy who's like so good. How could he possibly be normal?
Yeah. But no, I enjoyed it. I'm a sucker for anything behind the scenes, right? You know, I've always heard like, oh, it would be brutal to have Hard Knocks for your team. I think that'd be great. You can learn so much more, right? The more information, the better. So I enjoyed it, and I hope Peyton Manning keeps doing it because anything behind the scenes I enjoy.
Okay. Maybe we can get a Omaha Productions behind the scenes of the Berman household.
I don't think anyone would watch that.
That's definitely not true. There's at least like 1,000 people who would watch it.
Have you consumed any good programming? I take it you're a Bear guy. The Bear. You strike me as that.
I was in the first season. We have not gotten to season 2 yet. Well, that's the next thing that we will work our way through.
I keep hearing it. I haven't watched it yet. So, but like, to me, it hits a lot of categories you would like.
What does that mean?
Well, you like cooking shows. I take it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. You like.
I like food. I like restaurants. Yeah.
No, but I also feel that's a show that.
But you haven't watched it, so how do you know?
No, based on based on the dialogue surrounding it, I feel as if that's a show that true fans of like art, as with television as art
on a pedestal here.
Yeah, like television as art. Not the mainstream sense, but like there's really.
I'm not a Big Bang Theory guy, is what you're saying.
Sure. Yes, I think that would be right up your alley there. I've been watching with Emily. It's only a few episodes so far. Hijack on Apple TV. I'm into that. I'm curious to see where that goes.
Which one is that?
It's with Idris Elba.
Idris Elba. Okay.
Yeah.
Idris.
I know it's Stringer Bell.
Yeah.
Stringer Bell. I don't mean to minimize him there, but
what a good looking man.
I mean, it's a good show. It's a good program. I'm enjoying that.
Okay.
And that's the extent. Otherwise,
I'm glad you've been able to make time for that while in the middle of writing a book.
Yeah. That's well, it's once a week. There's been 4 episodes thus far.
Okay. You can't do it. It's Apple TV. They do the rollout.
Exactly. So that's been once a week. Yeah. I do want to see Oppenheimer. I'm kind of waiting for that to come out. Yeah,
I'm a little bit. I was looking forward to Barbie. I'm a little bit jaded by this idea that it's not like a one-off. This is like the beginning of they want to like create their own like Marvel universe, and it's all just very commercial. So I'm a little bit anti Barbie at the moment, although the movie does look good.
Okay.
Okay.
Any thoughts on Messi coming to the MLS?
Not particularly.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what. Boy, do I love watching Carlos Alcaraz play.
That's tennis. That's correct.
It's like the way that he moves, the shots that he hits. It's like the peak of athleticism. Like nobody moves the way it's unbelievable. Like this like dream state of like the perfect youthful body, the way he moves, it's unbelievable.
I'll take your word for it. I didn't watch that. I actually didn't read many stories on that either.
Okay.
Are you going to the Premier League games this weekend in Philly?
I actually am going to go to the game on Saturday.
Chelsea?
Brighton.
Okay. Is that who they're playing? Is it Chelsea versus Brighton?
Yeah.
Okay.
My guys. Go Seagulls.
There you go.
All right. Anything else, Zach?
Training camp begins a week from today. Well, they report a week from yesterday. I believe the first practice is going to be a week from today.
We will be back with daily pods. We don't know who our producer is yet.
Yeah.
But we will be back in a week.
Nick Sirianni is going to be at the Washington and Jefferson football camp tomorrow, out in Western PA, where I think it's actually the Mike Sirianni football camp. But Nick Sirianni will be there, and a lot going on with the Eagles. Excited for next week.
And most of all, as we started the show, congratulations to the Duns.
Congratulations to the Dons. Thrilled for Marissa.
Indeed.
Yeah, she's we miss her. Happy to have Kent here, but we miss Marissa and wishing her the best and hope she listens to all of these.
All right. Well, I hope she's got better things to do than listening to every single episode, but maybe
we can keep them shorter for her benefit.
Don't get carried away. All right. That'll do it for this episode of Birds with Friends. Thank you to Kent. Thank you to all the sickos. For all of us here, for Zach and Madison, I'm Bo. We thank you for listening. We will talk to you next Wednesday as training camp begins. And as always, we love you.